The buzzword of the week is COP28, and in this program, we will be bringing you Namibian stories, African stories, and international stories about the world's biggest annual climate conference, which is currently underway in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. Stay tuned. I hope you enjoy it.
Connection. It's in the human touch, the feeling of belonging. It inspires us and empowers us, creates clarity from complexity. It starts new conversations, unlocks the power of advice, and makes an impact on your life. At Alex Forbes, we pioneer insight to provide you with advice that connects your decisions of today to your impact tomorrow.
Let's start with some good news. Kelp Blue, a company that also operates in Lüderitz, has won the Zayed Sustainability Prize in the climate category at COP28. Now, Kelp Blue, what it does is that it harvests the kelp canopy offshore naturally, and it produces an array of sustainable products. Let's take a look at this video.
There's a magic to kelp forest which I think nothing else has. It's like a children's labyrinth. So there's an enormous sense of both excitement and wonder, but also calming. The way these plants move, the light, it's a very spiritual experience. Human history is full of these extraordinary examples of ingenuity and of innovation when faced with vast challenges. The challenge of our age is climate, it's biodiversity, it's our relationship with nature, and we will fix this. We're in Namibia for a very simple reason, which is that these cold, nutrient-rich waters are the best place for growing kelp in the world. At Kelp Blue, what we do is we plant kelp forests, these enormous 15, 20 meter high seaweed. Like land forests, they draw down carbon, and that carbon then is locked away forever. If we compare the kelp forests to the Amazon, the kelp forests of the world sequester significantly more carbon. What we really want to achieve is rewilding the oceans. We want to reintroduce a myriad of species, so more diversity, different kinds of creatures thriving on and off each other. The biodiversity aspect is entirely interconnected with climate change. You can't have one without the other. What keeps this place magical for me is that there's so much to do with the kelp. We trim the top of this forest regularly. What we do with the biomass is we turn it to something called biostimulant that improves crop yields while improving soil health as well. The jobs we bring are very meaningful, so it's really people, planet, profit in its simplest sense.
With innovation, it is a continuous process. We're really still learning the full potential of this amazing plant. That involves a lot of experimentation.
So our ambition at Kelp Blue is to sequester a gigaton of carbon annually by 2050, and that's an astronomical number. Having the accolade from the Zayed Sustainability Prize brings us an enormous boost in terms of credibility, in terms of ability to move fast, and allows us to get one step closer to our ambition. I'd like to say thank you to the Zayed Sustainability Prize for being a lighthouse, an inspiration, something that brings us together, to make this world a better place. Sometimes the simplest solution can have the greatest impact.
Before we move on in the program, let's just take a step back and talk about COP28. Who are the major players in COP28 in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, and the conference, of course, lasts until the 12th of December. Reuters has this report.
Each country has its own agenda for the nearly 200 nations gathering at COP28 in Dubai. and finding consensus is a challenge as UN climate negotiations need unanimous support to pass. Here are some of the climate summit's main players and what they're looking for. China, the world leader in both clean and dirty energy. It's responsible for 30% of annual global emissions, making it the world's biggest greenhouse gas emitter. But it also has more renewable energy capacity than anywhere else. China has been feeling the impacts of climate change through heat waves, floods, and extreme drought. Despite having the world's second largest economy after the US, it sees itself as a developing nation in climate talks and argues wealthy, developed nations like the US should move first and fastest in policy and finance. It's part of the bloc of basic countries alongside South Africa, Brazil, and India, who argue the same. The United States is the world's second largest emitter. It comes to COP28 a year into rolling out a $369 billion plus subsidy package for electric vehicles and other green products. Its Inflation Reduction Act is expected to triple the country's clean energy capacity by 2030. But U.S. delegates will face pressure at COP28 after Washington pledged no new climate cash to the United Nations this year. It supports a COP28 deal to phase out CO2-emitting fossil fuel use, despite being the world's biggest oil and gas producer. The 27-country European Union is among the most ambitious. The bloc, along with the US, is pushing to triple renewable capacity. It also aims to end new coal-fueled power plants, phase out fossil fuels, and power electricity grids with renewable sources in the 2030s. African countries are pushing for climate finance to speed up green energy projects. But not everyone's on the same page. Some, like Kenya, Ethiopia, and Senegal, have backed calls for phasing out fossil fuel production. Others, like Mozambique, want to develop their reserve of gas to capitalize off European gas demands. But they do agree that any deal on phasing out fossil fuels must allow poor nations to develop reserves in the short term to alleviate energy poverty.
Let's bring matters back closer to home. Now, James Mnupe, he's Namibia's Green Hydrogen Commissioner, tells us from Dubai about Namibia's journey so far at COP28.
So the first 3 years of COP for Namibia have been very busy. Some of us, of course, were working much more closely with the presidency in the beginning. We're now right here at Namibia House, but even while we were busy with the presidency, Tantashimi and Menangula and Honorable Wendo have all been here and they've attracted a lot of visitors. We've spoken about everything from mobilizing capital to how do we work together on certification of green molecules. Today we were looking at how do we look at offtake support mechanisms. And so the Namibian House is a hive of activity for us, which is fantastic. But of course we've also been busy outside of the Namibian House. We've been at the World Leaders Action Climate Summit up in the main hall. Yesterday we actually presented alongside the EU President Ursula von der Leyen and the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, was there on stage with our own president, where we made a global pledge to accelerate the deployment of renewable energy. We of course attended the G77 summit, which is of course really headed by Cuba at the moment, where the president, and China was there as well. And so as Namibia, we were showing solidarity with the people of Palestine, all the way with partnering from Japan. We had the governor of the Japanese Bank for International Cooperation was at the Namibian House yesterday, and they signed an MOU with the Minister of Finance to collaborate on mobilizing concessionary capital into Namibia to build some of these assets. So really, Namibia, by far, colleagues, we are a global company, a global country today. We're doing business from east to west, north to south, and it's really an exciting time to be a citizen. And so I'm very excited to be here, to be doing some of this work on your behalf.
Every day, you make choices that make you legendary. Journey together with us on the path to securing your legacy as a member of the League of Legends. With the Select Platinum Bundle Fee Premium Bank offering, you will access tools that will enable you to thrive. If you earn 850,000 Namibian dollars per annum or more, you can apply for this offering today via bankvinted.com.na for only 447 Namibian dollars per month. Bank Vinted, a member of Capricorn Group.
For the first time, world leaders this year at COP28 is taking a look at public health and how it is being impacted by climate change. Reuters has filed this report.
From heat stress to air pollution and the increased spread of disease, a warming climate is making people sick around the planet, threatening to undo decades of progress in public health.
The climate crisis is a health crisis. It's well overdue. That's 27 COPs have been and gone without a serious discussion of health.
This year's UN Climate Summit COP28 was the first time leaders there focused on public health. Here are some of the key ways that experts say climate change is impacting people's health. Mosquitoes that carry viruses including dengue, malaria and Zika are shifting into new parts of the world as warmer temperatures and heavy rains create more hospitable conditions for them to breed. Take Bangladesh, which is grappling with its worst ever outbreak of dengue. Experts say it has been driven by rising temperatures and a longer monsoon season. While floods in Pakistan last year led to a 400% increase in malaria cases in the country, the disease has also spread into the highlands of Africa that previously had been too cold for mosquitoes. Waterborne diseases are also on the rise. Cholera is spread by contaminated food and water and can kill within hours without treatment. In 2022, 44 countries reported cases of the disease, a 25% increase over 2021. That's according to the World Health Organization, which noted the role played by cyclones, floods and drought in cutting off access to clean water and helping bacteria to thrive. Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus is the Director General of the WHO.
Changing weather patterns driven by human activity and the burning of fossil fuels is contributing to record numbers of cholera outbreaks. And our warming planet is expanding the range of mosquitoes which carry dangerous pathogens like dengue, chikungunya, Zika, and yellow fever into places that have never dealt with them before.
Heat stress is one of the more obvious health impacts of global warming and is projected to impact hundreds of millions of people as temperatures continue to climb over the next few decades. A July study in the journal Nature Medicine estimated that some 61,000 people died during European heatwaves in the summer of 2022. The heat has also made forests drier, fueling extreme wildfires across the world. In the United States, wildfire air pollution now kills somewhere between 4,000 and 28,000 people every year. Dr. Lujain Al-Godmani is the president of the World Medical Association.
Well, I'm a physician, and I saw firsthand the health impacts of climate change. We see a surge of emergency admissions of heat stress, heat exhaustion, increased risk of cardiovascular disease, mental health diseases. We even saw vector-borne diseases in Europe, and not just in the usual regions. So our health system is already exhausted. They're not resilient enough. They're not strong enough.
As the COP28 summit focused on health, the United Arab Emirates and several charities offered $777 million to help eradicate neglected tropical diseases that are expected to worsen as temperatures climb.
Africa's got immense potential when it comes to being a green powerhouse. Let's listen to Kenya's President William Ruto elaborate on this issue.
Turning Africa into a green powerhouse is crucial not only for the continent, Kenya's president has said, but for the decarbonisation of the whole world. William Ruto was speaking at the COP28 Climate Summit on Friday.
We cannot afford to neglect the immense potential or ignore the pressing needs of a continent on the cusp of transformative growth.
After a year of record temperatures, the pressure is on for this year's summit to accelerate action to limit climate change. And that's at a time when Africa's potential for renewable energy production, in particular green hydrogen, has been in focus.
Climate change does not respect artificial distinctions, traditional boundaries, or old antagonisms. Instead, it should unite us against a shared, borderless challenge.
But this has also been a year that has witnessed catastrophic and deadly floods in East Africa, following a record drought. Kenya was one of the countries affected, so too was Somalia. Intense rains there have displaced hundreds of thousands of people, adding to a humanitarian crisis caused by years of insurgency. Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud also spoke at COP on Friday.
For a country struggling with debt stress, unlimited access to finance, fighting terrorism and responding to a humanitarian crisis at the same time is akin to impossibility. The case of Somalia is a clear demonstration of the intricate linkage between climate change, peace and security.
The UN summit started on Thursday with delegates adopting a new fund to help poorer nations cope with costly climate disasters. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa on Friday commended the initiative. However, he also added that if it is to effectively support the most vulnerable countries, then there will need to be more funding on a much greater scale.
One of the big victories at COP28 is the adoption of a climate disaster fund. Reuters tells us more about this.
The UN Climate Summit clinched an early victory on Thursday, with delegates adopting a new fund to help vulnerable nations cope with the cost of climate-driven disasters. The deal was adopted following the COP28 opening ceremony in Dubai and already follows many months of negotiations. But some groups were cautious, noting there were still unresolved issues, including how the fund would be financed in the future. The United Arab Emirates will contribute $100 million to the pot, along with other countries contributing a total of just over $300 million. Germany pledged $100 million and the United States $17.5 million, with hopes the amount would build to a substantial sum. The early breakthrough on the damage fund, which poorer nations have demanded for years, could help grease the wheels for further compromises. Earlier in the day, COP28 President Sultan Al Jaber, who is also the CEO of the UAE's national oil company, opened the summit urging countries and fossil fuel companies to work together to meet global climate goals. Al Jaber aimed to strike a conciliatory tone following months of criticism over his appointment as the head of COP28.
Let history reflect the fact that this is the presidency that made a bold choice to proactively engage with oil and gas companies. We had many hard discussions. Let me tell you, that wasn't easy. But today, many of these companies are committing to zero methane emissions by 2030 for the first time. And now, many national oil companies have adopted net zero 2050 targets for the first time. And I'm grateful that they have stepped up to join this game-changing journey. But I must say, it is not enough. And I know that they can do much more.
Over the next 2 weeks, governments will also debate whether to agree, for the first time, to phase out the use of CO2-emitting coal, oil and gas globally, the main source of emissions. Also on the agenda is what's known as the global stocktake. This is when countries assess their progress in meeting global climate goals. the main one being the Paris Agreement goal of limiting global warming to well below 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 2 degrees Celsius.
Let me show you something. Don't worry. Next time, I check nice.
Thanks, but it's okay. FNB Insurance checks nicer.
At FNB Insurance, we provide cover for all your valuables, from your phone to your laptop to your car. FNB Insurance. You value it, we cover it. T's and C's apply.
One of the biggest concerns at the COP28 Climate Summit is the influence of the fossil fuel industry. A climate activist of Uganda, Vanessa Nakate, has more.
Billions of dollars, not millions, are needed to address the ongoing climate crisis. That message came from Ugandan climate activist Vanessa Nakate at the COP28 summit on Sunday. She was speaking after COP began with an agreement to create a loss and damage fund that has mobilized millions of dollars so far.
The people that are on the front lines of the climate crisis, they need billions to address the worst impacts of this crisis and not millions. And when I say that finance has to serve the interests of the people, it is because climate change is more than weather. It's more than statistics. It's really about the people.
Nakate added that her biggest worry was the fossil fuel industry's influence over the COP process. There is skepticism among some delegates at this year's conference that COP28 President Sultan Al Jaber, head of the UAE's national oil company, can be an honest broker of a climate deal. Fossil fuel giant ExxonMobil's chief executive is also attending for the first time, in a sign of how oil and gas companies are trying to portray themselves as part of the solution to global warming. Climate advocate and former US Vice President Al Gore said, however, that Darren Woods should not be taken seriously.
He's protecting his profits and placing them in a higher priority than the survival of human civilization.
ExxonMobil declined to comment. As the COP28 host this year, the UAE is hoping to sell a vision of a low-carbon future that includes rather than shuns fossil fuels. That's mainly through the use of carbon capture storage, or CCS, to keep carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, or by making oil and gas discoveries cleaner. In her comments on Sunday, Nakate said experts like the International Energy Agency have said CCS is expensive, risky, and hasn't reached the commercial scale to address the climate crisis.
It doesn't address the air pollution that kills more than 5 million people annually as a result of the burning of fossil fuels. So to me, CCS is a false solution, it's a fairy tale, and it allows fossil fuel companies to continue business as usual.
#climate action is very important at a COP28. We're going to take a look at 3 videos of Africans that really took this hashtag to heart.
Gorongosa has taught me a big lesson. For you to do something big and to make big changes, you need everyone to be involved. My name is Larissa Souza. I'm a Mozambican, and we are right now in Gorongosa National Park. We had a big cyclone into 2019. It was a big wake-up call that, hey, we all have to do something. We have been doing a lot of sensitization and talking to communities around not cutting trees, for example, not doing uncontrolled burns. We want also to make sure that we can put together the tools to make sure that we have nature-based solutions for all of the climatic problems that we are facing. Our approach is to ensure that we are living in a balance. You cannot talk about this if somebody's hungry, if somebody's still thinking about putting food on their table. And so we need to cater for these things first and then step into the bigger picture. We've been having recently quite a lot of natural disasters, but seeing people working together towards conservation, towards education, it inspires me to work harder and to also make sure that we see a brighter future together.
kilichonifanya mimi nianze mpaka ujasiriamali, nilitaka watoto wangu baadaye waishi maisha mazuri, niwapatie elimu na baadaye waendelee mbele zaidi. Siishi yale maisha ambayo tulikuwa tunayaishi. Nyumba zetu zilikuwa zinaungua kila wakati kutokana na matumizi ya karoboi, na hii ilitufanyia sisi tuwe yani kama, na unakuta siku hauna mafuta ya taa, umetokea mgeni, unachukua kiatu cha mtoto, unaunguza, kesho yake mtoto ana kiatu ya kutembelea. Na hii ilitufanyia sisi tuwe yani kama kizuizi ya hizo madhara kwa jamii, kuwasambazia sola manyumbani. Kwanza malazi nimeyapata, na watoto wangu wapo shuleni na napitia hiyo biashara ya sola, na bado familia inayenizunguka kama mama yangu, bibi yangu akihitaji msaada, napata kitu cha kuwapa kupitia hiyo faida yangu ninayopata kwenye sola. Mtazamo wangu ni wachanya kwa sababu nimesonga kimaisha, kiuchumi na hata kiakili, maana unajua ukipata elimu ni sawasawa umechanganua mpaka na akili.
I need to do something to bring people closer to nature. My name is Dick Semakwale, Community Extensions Manager for Afran Parks Majete. To convince someone who has been a poacher to be somebody who is able to appreciate nature and support it, it's not an easy job. And we are dealing with a mindset change here. If you want to make sure that we have a sustainable environmental management, local communities who suffers more, they need to be involved, they need to be engaged. They should not be left out. The moment we leave them out, it means the effort, all effort that we are doing, they are invalid. We go into the communities and engage them, bring them to a round table. Some few minutes, you see, we are moving together.
Pano tukupanga zama dramu asomba, tina pempha majete kuti na feso program tukuifuna. Izi zilizofunikira kwa ife chifukwa choti malmote tikanapita ku majete kwa unonga nkhalango.
Communities feel they are part of us and we are part of the communities. So that's why the trust and mutual benefit comes in. The African parks can live, but the structure that we have left, the understanding that we have left within the communities should proceed.
That's it for Business 7 for this week. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll see you again next week, same time, same place. Goodbye.